Welcome back to Takedown. Just an FYI for people. A new episode of Observe This with myself and Draven is both in the podcast feed and on YouTube. If you want to check that out, we had a really spirited conversation around the current wrestling scene and why he and I both kind of feel a little bit out of touch is not the right thing. We're just not as excited about all the wrestling as a lot of the fan bases are. Though it feels like to me, now you tell me if I'm wrong, if you are really in love with WWE and you don't care about AEW, it seems like you're really happy. Or if you are really in love with AEW and you don't care about WWE, it seems that you're really happy. Or if you're a fan of one of the other promotions that aren't US based just because of the access, you are probably also really happy. But if you're trying to watch all of the content, you're probably really unhappy right now.
Yeah, I mean, that last part is definitely true. Unhappy is probably not the way, because I mean, it's all good. So I think the word I'd use is frustrated. And it's like the more I watch, it's like it feels like I fall further and further behind, and there's more that I have to miss and stuff. And yeah, so I think, yeah, if you're somebody, especially AEW, like I would say, that if you're just watching AEW and you're just a fan of AEW, you're probably most happy right now of all the fan bases. I think WWE, the booking is a little frustrating at times, and some of the finishes aren't great. New Japan, if you're more popular, it'd be great. I don't know about CMLL. But fans of that seem pretty happy. So maybe that would be like AEW, perhaps. Like AEW is clicking right now. Like I don't know how they're doing financially. We hear things, but we don't really know. So, but creatively, they seem to be doing really well.
Here's a question for you, and this is not even what we're going to talk about today, but it's been something that's on my mind because Draven and I had this conversation about matches. Mm-hmm. This is the tried and true conversation. Everyone with matches or moments. And it's funny because when I was on Chris Jericho's podcast, I literally don't know if this made the show, by the way, but it was the discussion of matches versus moments. And, he was talking about how a lot of people think it's matches, it's not always matches, it's moments, and it's what you do in those moments, for the stardom or whatever he was saying. I don't even remember because it was so long ago. And I found that interesting because AEW is very, they use the match as the most key element of their storytelling is the match, because they have a fan base that really, really loves the matches. And we were talking about A Star Is Born in the Discord the other day, that movie that I love. And there's a correlation between a match and a song, I think. So the Bradley Cooper character tells Lady Gaga that something to the effect of, a song is just 12 notes in whatever octave, and it's what you do within those 12 notes that really says something about you as an artist. And I was thinking about that in relationship to wrestling, because part of my frustration with AEW is it's so match heavy, and all of the matches are so spot heavy and athletic heavy that I find them all fairly similar. Like you know what's not going to be a finish, and this is like an argument for WWE style too. WWE style is the heat and the shine and this like pattern and rhythm, and I know when the finish is not happening in WWE matches too, but because of AEW leaning so heavy into the athletics, I feel like a lot of their matches are similar. And then you have the parts of the matches where, one wrestler will do like a devastating finisher, and then the other, and in another match, 3 matches down the line, that same move is used as like a transition move to go to commercial or something. And so like there's a leaning on like, let's just make the audience go ooh and ah. And I was at a comedy show the other day, and I noticed the same thing in the comedy show. So there's 3 acts. And in 2 of those acts, they almost had the same joke. And Crystal turned to me and was like, why didn't they just talk about it in the back? Like, did no one know what was going to happen? And I was like, well, it's a small comedy club. I'm sure if it was at like a higher level of a comedy club, and the headliner, if one of the opening acts did a similar joke as the headliner, they'd probably get their ass kicked and never get booked again. But in AEW, like that stuff happens a fair amount. And it has happened in WWE, by the way, as well. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's just like this idea of what the matches mean. And I said, I love a match that is meaningful, has stakes, is part of this, a great part of the story. And I threw out Hangman and Moxley, like as a culmination of that feud. I'm in there with that match. Same thing with Cody and Cena. As a culmination of that feud, I was in there with that match. But I cannot equate those matches with a main event on Dynamite that goes 3 minutes past the hour and that ends in some sort of randomness just because the moves are good. Like, to me, those aren't even close to the same things. So you watch a lot of wrestling. Where do you sit in the match moment debate?
Well, it's funny because I think, ironically, I think that what it is that when you have a great match in, apologize for that in the background.
Am I recording with Dave? What's going on?
Yeah. If you have a great match in WWE, it's going to stand out more. And if you have a great moment in AEW, it's going to stand out more because they lean so heavily on the other thing. I had a sense of where your question was going, and I pulled up my spreadsheet of where I keep track of everything. And there's been like 11 that I've had 5-star or better matches in AEW this year. And I bet you like most of them you wouldn't even remember, but you are going to remember the great moments. And similarly in WWE, if I pulled up the great matches, you probably remember them all because there's not that many of them. Whereas the moments, it's like every show feels like we have a moment like this. A couple weeks ago, we had Roman Reigns returning at the end of a show, and that was great for the crowd that was there, and they popped like crazy and stuff. But by a week later, you don't really remember it because they've done 3 other
and a lot of them are so similar. They're like the same.
But they're there for that crowd, so you will remember like the big, like the Brock return. You may not have liked it, but you're definitely going to remember it. Or, the Cena heel turn, which had, no follow-up. Cody winning the belt at WrestleMania, last year or whatever. So you get all these different things. And you even have stuff in some of the lesser brand, like NXT and whatever. Like the first time a TNA wrestler showed up, oh my God, wow, Santana getting a great reaction. Now it's every week, right? So it's nothing. It's like, so I think that because they lean so heavily in one direction, it's when they actually go the other way that it actually has more effect.
By the way, if you were to put a match in its own thing, and I didn't have any matches before or any matches after, I think I would agree with you about a lot of those AEW matches. But when you put the match and I get to see what just happened 2 matches before, and I get to see what happened 2 matches after, and I got to see what happened last week, it so much so blends in together for me. There are some spots that I will always kind of get up for, a Will Ospreay space flying tiger drop, just because it is so graceful and it is so almost looks like magic in a sense of how he flies through the air. Or Spanish fly from the top rope, even though that move is silly because it is so much a collaborative move, I still love it because I just think it is so athletic and so graceful. But a lot of the other moves to me are just versions of the same thing that we see over and over and over. And if Will Ospreay is going to have the same, a similar match with the same spots on TV as he does on pay-per-view, then why do I need to buy the pay-per-view? With the exception of maybe there's better stakes or whatever. Because I was thinking about this. Zack Sabre Jr. and Nigel McGuinness. Obviously, we know why they're doing that match for that crowd. But for the TV audience, I think AEW's fan base at least the majority of them are probably a little bit more knowledgeable about the history of stuff like ROH. So they're probably a little bit more bought into a Nigel McGuinness match than a WWE casual fan would be with their stuff. But to me, I'm like, oh, so we're going to get a bunch of nice near falls and Zack Sabre Jr. is going to win. That's what that match is. Now, what they do in between to get you excited or to get you fooled or to make you think Nigel is winning, I'm sure it'll be really good. But to me, I'm like, I'm already not interested in that match, and it hasn't even happened because I kind of know the deal, right? I know, I know. So I'm not going to be as invested in that match as I will be with MJF and Hangman, even though I probably have that one figured out too. But just because that program has been so good, and this is like a not program. This is a match for the pay-per-view and a match for the live crowd. So it's just things like that where I know they're trying to they're trying to bring in different audiences and give you different flavors and give you different things. And you don't want all the same thing, but to me, it just all feels like all the same thing. So we'll see with Forbidden Door, which is this upcoming weekend. But on paper, I'm like, fine. All-star matches, all-star game matches. I asked Dave on air on Wrestling Observer Radio, which you probably haven't heard yet, but I was like, how long ago do you think that they knew that they were going to do this cage match? And he was like, well, I think Ospreay said he just learned like a couple days before, and Ibushi had no idea. And
Ospreay even said in the promo, there's a few people I got to check with, so that may have been a shoot. Like Omega's sitting at home in Winnipeg playing video games, and he gets a call from Tony. It's like, hey, can you do a cage match next week? Yeah, boss. Yeah, just send me a plane ticket. I know he lives in Florida, but it was funny what you just said, because I was talking to a friend of mine this weekend, and he's going to the show this weekend, and he's also going to I think the Progress show the night before, or Rev Pro, one of those. And he's sending these graphics, and he's like, "This is gonna be my match of the weekend," and it's like Michael Oku and Leon Slater, and I'm like, okay, those are two, good wrestlers. I haven't seen a ton of Michael Oku. I've seen a lot of Leon Slater. I like him. I'm like, but I mean, you look at the card on Sunday, and it's like they got all these like super great wrestlers. Like I said, I'd be really surprised if that is the match of the weekend. And then he's like, and the next day he's like, oh, Nigel and Zach, that's gonna be the match of the weekend. And I'm like, okay, that's not going to be the match of the weekend. That may be the one you enjoy the most, and
it'll be the one that stands out though because of the style.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. And for me, as a longtime ROH fan, I call myself an ROH historian. Like that would be one I'd be interested in, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be the best match. And I do think it's going to be a great match, but Nigel's been inactive for the most of the last 15 years, and I've seen him 3 times already, and he's good. He's not great. He's never had the best match on any show he's been on. Zach is amazing. So, they're going to have as good a match as possible, but some of those other matches, MJF Hangman, Tony and Athena, that 10-man cage match, like those, even Swerve and Okada could steal the show. I don't think it will, but it could, so Kyle Fletcher and Hiromu could end up stealing the show. Like there's a lot of stuff on there. I mean, and I sound excited about it, and I'm not. I kind of feel the same way as you, and I'm probably not even going to get the show. The only way I will is if I really somehow free up a ton of time in the next week and a half, but I don't think I will. So if I don't have a chance to watch it before next week's Dynamite, I'll just probably end up skipping it.
All right. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, there's 3 big topics that we want to give our thoughts on. The first one is Chris Jericho's pending free agency. Do we even know the date? I've seen December. I've seen January.
So I went back and looked at the Observer, and Dave had reported at the time. He referenced the Sports Illustrated article that I think we both saw that said he was signed through December 2025. Dave said it's actually January 2026. I mean, it's a month different. But I had thought that there was some 1-year options involved, but Dave at the time had said he'd previously had 1-year options on his contract, not this time. So theoretically he's done in January, which we've seen Tony, he's let people go early. I doubt if he'd do that in this current climate. But again, I'm not well, I guess we're going to talk about what's next for Jericho, and everyone's assuming he's going to go back to WWE. Makes sense, but my question is whether or not either side needs the other.
Right. Well, okay, so here's the thought.
Yeah.
If you're Jericho, I guess we can look at it from all the different sides.
Right.
Let's look at it from the side of AEW. Let's look at it from the side of WWE, and let's look at it from the side of Chris. Now, obviously, we can't put ourselves in Chris's shoes. Only Chris knows what he wants to do. He did a great job, by the way, in his post WWE career in rebuilding himself as an older guy who wanted to learn the style of the younger guys. Like, he didn't do that whole thing where he was like, oh, the younger generation, X, Y, and Z. He tried to lean in a little bit more to what they thought wrestling was. Like, you would always hear, oh, yeah, the Young Bucks taught me so much. I thought I was going to teach them stuff, and they taught me stuff. Now, whether or not he believes that ultimately in his overall understanding of wrestling, or just for that day and age of what he needed to do to stay over, I'm not sure exactly, but he did do a really good job of remaking himself as a kind of an old guy, but an old guy who was willing to wrestle the style of the younger guys. I don't think he can do that anymore. He is nowhere near athletic enough to do that anymore. And you can sort of see it, because when he tries to do it, that's when he kind of screws up sometimes. So from the AEW standpoint, here's my thoughts. If I'm Tony Khan, I keep him. And the reason I keep him is because I think he is a really good spokesperson for AEW. Chris Jericho has been very pro AEW and anti WWE since he's been under the AEW umbrella. He hasn't done those things that some of those other wrestlers have done, which is like, trying to keep in good favor of the WWE side so that, they would be nice to them when their deal was up. I'm sure he's not antagonistic, unless he and Triple H just don't get along, which I'm rereading his book Undisputed about when he went to WWE, and it's pretty clear that he and Triple H don't like each other in that book. But so he was a Vince guy. Like, I think he really appreciated Vince to some extent in wrestling for him. So if we are of the opinion that money for Tony Khan is really not that big of a deal, and it's really about setting the market, I would keep him, because I just think even if I would keep him not as an active weekly wrestler. I would utilize him in a different way to where what he does means more. I would refashion him in a way as a legend who the fan base should wrap their arms around, instead of feel that they're getting forced into seeing all the time. And that there is a talent in that, right? It's not an easy thing to kind of recondition the audience to the guy. But I think if you keep Chris Jericho and he's not asking for the moon, Tony Khan, and this is kind of an understated thing about AEW, the best thing, or my favorite thing business-wise about Tony Khan, is he got so much more money on the new TV deal, and his salaries did not escalate that much. And the wrestlers are not. I didn't see people like, getting hands up in the air about it. They're like, yeah, cool. Like, he invested it. It's his money. It's his business plan. So he's got it. He's got the opportunity to bring him back, for whatever he believes Chris's value is worth. I think the problem is just if he does, because Tony Khan is so much about the matches. If he doesn't see Chris being able to go in the ring, he may not see the value, whereas that may lean to the WWE side. But if you were the AEW side, what would you do with Jericho?
Well, I think that Tony, not only is he about the matches, but he's also, especially right now, about trying to please his fan base and giving his fan base what he thinks they want. And I think that his fan base, and you've seen it and I've seen it, they don't want Chris Jericho. Like,
they don't like this version of Chris Jericho
Right.
This is like their least favorite version of Chris Jericho, this
Yeah.
Learning Tree one.
But
And it's because he's trolling the shit out of their fan base.
But it's funny because even in the ring, like I look back while you were talking there, and I was just looking back, and in the last year, like he's had like 5, and these are Dave Meltzer star ratings. He's had 5 4-star matches in the last year, which, you know, like for a 54-year-old guy, like that's pretty good. You know, he's not like a lot of their younger guys have probably had 3 times that many, but for him, like he's more than holding up his own in the ring. But I think the thing is what they don't like is the fact that he takes up all this TV time and that it's all about him. And ironically, that's the gimmick. Like, you know, like literally he has his talk segment is called TV time.
The other thing about it though, is he is still taking a lot of heat for whatever the Kylie Ray situation is. That we still have we still don't know exactly what that deal is, either from his side or from her side. Like it's just unspoken. The only thing we have is, you know, the reporter who I guess doesn't even exist anymore. You know, bringing it up and that's kind of where everything was left.
And ironically, she works there now in WWE. So I doubt if that would be any kind of factor, because that whole system is so big. And if Punk can work there, you know, like I'm sure they'd take just about anybody. But yeah, so if I'm AEW, like I'm thinking, you know, in the kind of role that you're talking about, sure, there's definitely value for him there. Then the question becomes, at what price? And is that something that Jericho is willing to do for that price? So if you're Tony Khan and money is no object, and it shouldn't be, you talk about the fact that he didn't spend a lot of the money. I mean, to be fair, a lot of the money was spent before he got the contract. Like he signed Mercedes, he signed Okada, he signed Ospreay to big money deals on the faith that he was going to get that contract. So if he hadn't have got the contract, like he's on the hook for that money, and then now he's losing money. So, and you know, and then so the people that are re-signing, the question is, are they being re-signed for big increases? You know, Matt Menard just re-signed. Like, did he get like triple what he used to make? I doubt it.
But that's the thing, though. It's like,
yeah,
I'm sure a Matt Menard does things that we don't see. That is very helpful. But you're competing for Matt Menard's services against yourself. Like, I can't.
But I mean, the thing is,
WWE
by what you're
saying,
but let's say he was making $100,000, because I think anybody on an elite contract gets that. Did he all of a sudden, did his salary jump to $300,000 because Tony Khan's getting, you know, $100 million more in rights revenue? No.
I mean, I can't imagine. Probably
I can't
not. He got some sort of a raise, you would imagine.
Well, maybe. I mean, if I'm Matt Menard and I'm offered 5 years at, you know, what I was making before, I'd probably grab it, you know, because like, where else are you going to make that kind of money?
Yeah, and this is not to say Matt Menard. I don't want to see Matt Menard out of work.
No.
I'm happy that he got his deal.
No, and for that kind of money, for what he does, like, I mean, he's a guy we never even see on screen. You know, like, I don't know what the going rate is in wrestling for that kind of job, but I'd do it.
He's he's eating well, man. You see that dude? He's eating well.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'm sure he got a bit of a raise, but you know, other people, you know, like Dustin, for instance, you know, he just re-signed, and he probably, you know, he got what he got on his first deal. He's probably happy with that, because now he's getting that kind of money and not having to work, you know, 20 times a year or whatever he.
Okay, what is the difference between Dustin and Jericho? Is it just that Dustin's not on TV all the time?
It's the fact that Dustin signed. I guarantee you, if Dustin said that he was leaving, this fan base that is turning on Chris Jericho right now would be turning on. Oh, he always wanted to go back to WWE. He always wanted to be with Cody. He's had 3 titles in ROH. He's tying up all this TV time. You know, Lee Moriarty should have been this champion, and Lee Johnson should have had that belt. And I guarantee it.
That's hilarious.
I'm not wrong.
Okay, so now let's talk about the WWE side.
Okay.
So if you are Nick Khan and Triple H and TKO, first of all, I don't know what they would even value his services at. He is someone they could bring in as a legend. He is someone that they could bring in as a sort of a shock, like one-time thing where maybe he gets his first program as like a cool run. But then I think he kind of gets lost in the middle, which is where he was when he left post the list. But they are doing everything they can to combat AEW, so he knows that. And maybe that's where the value actually is in taking folks from AEW. Mm-hmm. So if you're Jericho and you're negotiating, and look, he's not even a free agent, so we're speculating about what his market is. Maybe that's what you lean into, which is, you watch, you go on HBO Max and go watch the first year or two of the pay-per-views, and guess who's near the top of the card or in the main event? It's Chris Jericho. So maybe that's part of the leverage that he has there. But at the same time, WWE doesn't need him at all. They don't need him one bit. So on the WWE side, where do you sit?
Well, I think the key to their side, and especially Nick Khan, is how much does the AEW want him? Like that is tied into how much WWE wants him, I think. But I don't think they're going to outbid AEW. So, they'll set a value. And the key is, but if they find out that there's no interest on the AEW side, like they're just, no, we'll let them go. We're fine. I feel like they might not be interested at all. If you recall when his contract was coming up, he did that. He made that return and he was in the Royal Rumble. He started the Judgment Day and all that. They made him an offer. And I may be remembering wrong, but I feel like AEW might have like doubled it or something. Like it was just, they gave Copeland just a crazy offer that he probably was looking to leave anyways, but he couldn't turn it down. I feel like that's the kind of offer Jericho would get. Like he's not going to be a full-time main eventer, but you put him on that kind of deal where he works, maybe like a third of the year and he's making mid six figures, like that's the kind of thing. So that would give him time to do his music and maybe his acting and certainly his podcast. And he can get WWE people on his podcast. I don't know if he's doing that now, but he can certainly, I'm sure, would get more of them.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So there you go. So, that would probably be helpful for him in that sense. So, that would be like, so for them, I'm sure there's a number and they're very sports orientated when it comes to signings, as we've talked about before. So, they would probably place a value on him, but they're not going to get into a bidding war over a guy like Chris Jericho, I don't think, unless they sense that he was a big difference maker and AEW really wanted him. And, going back to what we previously talked about with AEW, I don't think that's the case.
And then if you're Chris Jericho, I think he can look at it in a couple different ways. He's got money for one. But this may also be his last opportunity to get a decent sized contract, right? So he may be looking at it that way. He's still got the Fozzy stuff and he wants the freedom to do all of that. But he clearly is willing to work around the schedule because he's been able to do that in AEW all these years. So, as you kind of age out of being an active wrestler, is it about the money? Is it about where you are? He would be I still think he's a bigger fish in a smaller pond in AEW than he would be in WWE. And the other thing, and here's, if I was Tony Khan, here's how I would use him. You have Bryan Danielson as as kind of like your spokesperson, right? When you need him.
Yeah.
Bryan Danielson. I would just use Jericho as a PR person.
Like a brand ambassador?
Well, he could be an active wrestler and he can be somebody who represents the company in a very smart way when it comes to media. He's a famous guy. He might be the single most famous person on their roster. Like Jon Moxley is a famous wrestler, but as just like someone who's done things on television and Dancing with the Stars and these different genres, Chris Jericho might be their most famous person.
I'm not sure there's any question.
So utilize him in that way. That's part of his deal. Is you are now instead of Tony Khan being on all these doing these radio hits or whatever, like Jericho, go on the whatever the larger podcasts are with the people who you've interviewed, like do some of these home and homes and go and talk about AEW and as well as part of your career. I would do way more stuff with that.
There's a problem with that. And I agree
they're
that
going to talk about WWE, you're going to say.
No, they might ask him about his politics. And
you don't have, but a lot of these podcasts, they're very formulated, right? They're not gonna throw questions.
Oh, so if you're talking about like wrestling podcasts,
no, I'm talking about any podcast.
Oh,
right?
So
I'm talking about
like a Bill Simmons or
Bill Simmons just talked about Cody. He didn't ask Cody about his politics one time.
True. Yeah, but Cody didn't have a wife that showed up at the White House on January 6th.
Yeah, that's true. But a lot of people don't even know that. I feel like more wrestling fans know that than anybody else knows.
Yeah. I mean, if they don't know about Vince and Janelle Grant, they definitely know.
Right, but it's fair game if it's out there. It's totally fair game, and then Chris can figure out if he wants to be on that or not. But.
Yeah, that's probably the best use of him. And in the WE sense, maybe and for Jericho too, like maybe it's a Legends deal where he has like a per appearance agreement, kind of like a Trish Stratus, where, like I'm sure Trish makes good money for even when she's not working. Like she's probably getting 6 figures a year and then more when she actually works. So something like that for Jericho, to where he can still do his podcast, still do his music, acting, whatever he wants to do. And then he shows up in WWE a few times a year to keep his name out there. Like maybe that's what he would want. As opposed to a deal where he's making decent money. You talk about his last big contract. Like if he's getting that $500,000-$600,000 a year for 3 years, he's expected to do a lot more. Probably, work the AEW schedule. Maybe not even quite as much as because AEW is pretty much full time the whole. What do you think
this dude's making right now? Like 4 or 5 million?
Probably 3 at least. I would think. What was Moxley? Did they ever? I had the sense Moxley was getting like close to 5, but I would think he'd be the highest paid there, maybe. And then then Jericho's probably right under him, and then the Bucks and Omega, Okada, Ospreay, Mercedes. So yeah, I think I had a spreadsheet that had him at 4, and that was about 2 years ago. So that would have been around the time he signed the deal, and that was right after Moxley signed too, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
All right, big story from over the weekend was this Lorenzo Fertitta buying TNA rumor. And so, we're not even going to really reference that necessarily, but just the idea of WWE being in business with TNA as a way to combat AEW television, because that's really what the rumor is getting TNA on a station and competing head to head with AEW Dynamite. What do you think about this scenario? Because history will tell us that it hasn't been really successful to throw your C brand at an A brand necessarily.
No, and in this case, it might be the D brand. I think it would depend on the station. If it was anything like if it was an A&E, as I've seen speculated,
I wouldn't even take the deal if it was.
No,
A&E,
that they would die on A&E. Because the LFG right now, like I don't know if I know you're not watching it. It's basically just a wrestling show now. Like they just have 4 matches in an hour. Like there's very little of the, like the coaches stuff and everything. It's just matches, and that thing's dying. You got Evolve on Tubi. Nobody's watching that. So, this, like, it would have to be on like a USA Network or FS1. And I don't think either of those stations are looking for wrestling right now.
CW.
CW would be interesting because they could use NXT the night before to promote it, and they could go back and forth like they're doing now. So I think that would be probably the most likely destination for them. Going up against Dynamite, I think it would put a hit on Dynamite. I don't know how much. I think Dynamite would still win, but I do think the Dynamite audience would go down.
Here's the thing, and here's what I've been saying, which is because people want to circle back and go, oh, last time they went head up with NXT, look what happened. And I was like, yep, you're right. It's really about how much WWE wants to incorporate their main roster talent, because if you go back in time, WWE is X amount more popular than they were back when they went head to head the first time. So, like, let's say if you want to use a Cody Rhodes as on a TNA segment to see how many people would go today, more people would tune in previous than the previous time they went head to head. So that's kind of the little bit of outlier.
Yeah, and you're most likely you're going to get like AJ,
Well, no, I mean, I think they would use. They may not use Cody in a program, but if you're just wanting, let's say AEW, let's say Dynamite the week before says, oh, we're gonna have a world title match on our show, WWE would go, okay, well, now we got to use Cody, or we got to use Punk, or we got to use somebody like that, right? It's this total week to week thing. But yeah, you wouldn't use those guys in a program. You would use AJ in a program for sure.
See, the problem is, and we talked about this in the Discord, and I agree with the point I think you were trying to make, is that if they do that, let's say they hear, okay, John Moxley is going to be facing Hangman for the world title. So WWE decides, okay, we're going to put Cody and Punk on TNA, and then they get killed.
They wouldn't get killed though.
On TNA, they might.
Yeah, I don't think they would get killed. They might lose. They might lose the demo.
The thing is, if they showed up in NXT, I think it would have a better option of succeeding, because I think that the name TNA itself is a negative. And I think no matter what, like if it was a WWE show on Wednesday, it's going to do better than a WWE owned TNA. Like, I think that name TNA is like, there's people that just will not watch it.
Global force, baby.
Yeah. Like I mean, and Impact Wrestling has unfortunately the same thing. Like, it would almost have to be a, like a rebranded WWE show.
Just call it WWE TNA.
Yeah, but that's, I mean,
put those 3 letters at the front.
Yeah, it's the 3 letters at the back that's the problem. I don't like, I'm just speculating because we don't know till it happens, but I watch TNA, and I mean, and okay, so right now, like TNA and NXT have a lot of the same people on both shows. It looks different when you're watching TNA. Like, it just, they're in smaller buildings. Actually, they're not in smaller buildings, but it's produced. Now, it may be different if WWE is producing it. So that may make a difference as well, because TNA, like, their production is fine, but it's studio wrestling versus, like, even though TNA or even though NXT is filmed in a studio, like, it's just like that crowd is so lively, and it's just got the WWE magic behind everything. I
still hate it.
Well, yeah, because the backstage stuff is so garbage.
Well, even the crowd stuff, I don't like seeing the same crowd react to the same stuff every single time.
Fair enough.
In the same way.
I get that.
It's not all the same people, but it's pretty clearly a lot.
I'd rather see that than these half-empty
for sure, 100%
that TNA does.
100%.
And that's the thing. Like, and then they do have, like, TNA has this same guy in the same seat, no matter where they are. Have you seen this guy? Like, he's
no,
so
I've not seen.
I'm sure Mike Gilbert knows him, but yeah, he sits in the exact same seat. I met him when I went to the Orlando taping.
I wonder if TNA underneath the WWE umbrella would get Mike Gilbert back to the podcasting studio.
Well, I think he'll get back at some point anyways, but I think he'd do it just for the chaos, Mike. Yeah. But yeah, I do, like, I think it's going to happen. And I if I had to put money on it, I would bet it's going to be CW. And the funny thing is, I said CW like a year ago. And because it just makes so much sense to have the 2 nights in a row, and CW has to be happy with the numbers that NXT is doing. Like, people talk about AEW, and they are showing growth right now, like year-over-year growth, like without Max. So, but NXT is as well, and hardly anybody talks about that. So,
so I don't think WWE TNA would beat AEW head to head, but I do and I don't, and that's part of it. You want to beat it, but the other part of it is you want to make them less valuable to the cable ecosystem. Because, like, for instance, let's say this whole WBD Discovery thing. Let's say that the side that AEW sits on is sold. Then, whatever, unless I would probably think WBD still owns a small piece, but whatever shakes out, there's just not as much security for Tony Khan, and he would be out there kind of like, in a same market where you have a bunch of these different media companies, tech companies, sports companies, looking to vie for your services. But if WWE goes to the table with those same people and they go, we get the same ratings and we're cheaper, thus, why are you going to work with them? Like, there's going to be some of that stuff going on. But I believe that AEW would be able to withstand and still win those weeks for the most part. But it's less. I think it's less about that, and it's more about diminishing their value to the market. But at the same time, every time we think that the market is like the whole bubble is going to pop, it doesn't. So maybe they could get more value out of just the idea that that they even in doing maybe a little bit lesser ratings, they're still going to be valuable because cable sucks right now for ratings. So who knows?
Yeah, and it also could be, and I think Jason is the one that brought this up in the Discord, that it could be about positioning AEW not as a competitor to WWE, SmackDown, and Raw, but as a competitor to NXT and TNA, which immediately puts them on a lower tier. So now instead of competing against the NFL, you're competing against the UFL. Like so you're saying, yeah, you can have wrestling. There's a lot of, there's Ring of Honor, there's TNA, there's NXT, there's AEW, or you can have the premier WWE. You know what I mean? Like, so there could be some of that involved as well. I don't know if the broadcasting companies are going to fall for that, but it may be part of the strategy.
All right, let's hit our last one here. Now, this piece of information just came out yesterday. We knew about this Brock and Cena thing. We talked about it last week. They want to go head-to-head with All Out. Now, here's the information that we didn't know last week. They could be debuting on ESPN. This could be their practice show for the ESPN app in going head-to-head with All Out. And that is an interesting piece of this because it would really be about how hard ESPN promotes this thing, I think, as far as what it could do to dent All Out. But here's from our friend Brian Rose on F4W. He said, PW Insider reported on Sunday that there have been discussions that the previously reported WWE PLE for September 20th could end up airing on ESPN going head-to-head with the All Out pay-per-view. PW Insider describes the move as a preview of the type of programming WWE will bring to that new partnership. Additionally, they were told that plans to unveil the still unannounced PLE, including where it will be broadcast, will be announced sometime this week. So we will have an idea sometime this week. Now, here's the thing that I immediately thought, and my buddy John Quinn and I were texting about it. Can they put it on the linear ESPN channel? Our friend Ryan Frederick says not so fast because they have college football. And I would imagine college football rates better than anything WWE could do, even for a middle of the road game. But then Brian Alvarez tweeted, I can confirm the working idea is the September Brock versus Cena PLE airing on ESPN and perhaps all of the other PLEs this year as well.
Wow.
So how does that work? Like, Peacock is just going to be like, all right, we're good.
Like, maybe ESPN buys them out.
ESPN could license them from Peacock.
Maybe WWE's already filled their contract of how many PLEs they're allowed to do because of all these extra ones they've been doing.
Because the original story about ESPN was it was going to start at WrestleMania next year.
Right.
So
yeah.
we're talking, 8
7
months. Yeah, or whatever it is until
I
then.
had a thought. Now, Ryan's point about not airing on ESPN against college or replacing college football made a lot of sense. What if they did a thing where they put it live on the app, but then aired it the next day on ESPN? So now not only are you airing it head to head with AEW, but you're also possibly hurting the replay value of people buying AEW by airing something the same weekend on ESPN. So where a lot of people might be, that AEW show was great, but you know what? There's this WWE show on ESPN. Maybe I'll just watch that. That they could do that. And I think a lot of people would watch it the next day on ESPN because the app is still fairly new. People probably don't even know they have it in a lot of cases, so they might do that. But I do think like a Brock Cena match on ESPN, wherever it is, that's going to hurt AEW. Like there's no question. The question is whether or not ESPN wants to hurt themselves by replacing college football with it. Like I don't.
Yeah, I would probably bet against that. But still, being on the app, like let's say, I don't know how. ESPN's probably in 60 some odd million homes. Out of that, I don't know how many people would get the app because I don't think they've done all the deals. I will get the app, but so if you even say half, that would be 30 million people who would have access to that show, and then how many over the top that they sell. I think they only expect to get to like 2 million non-cable homes in like the first year. So they have smaller goals, but still 30, let's say there's 20 to 30 million homes with this app on day one who could watch that show. That is a nice little audience for whatever WWE wants to run. And then you also have that week of, you're going to see lots of WWE talent on the shows. I don't, and who knows what kind of shows that they're going to create for this app, right? Because you need content on this app. Matt, can you imagine how many wrestlers are going to be on the Pat McAfee show that week?
Oh, it's just going to be it.
They're probably going to. Any mention of AEW is going to be super negative. Like, I think they're going to be playing dirty, though. They may not just want to bring up AEW just to not even get the name out there, but it's going to be, it's going to kind of bring out the worst of the competition here. So I don't know.
And it's funny because with ESPN now, they're probably going to use that McAfee show as like a newsbreaker kind of show. Like if you got a new signee, you put them on the Pat McAfee show because they got a lot of viewers for that show. I mean, and in their minds, especially Nick Khan, like he thinks, everybody that watches sports watches Pat McAfee. No, it's not true at all.
I mean, it's there's a social aspect to Pat McAfee.
True. Yeah.
Because his group of his team, his production team is really good at finding the younger audience through social and stuff. And the fact that the show's also streamed on YouTube for one. Like it's not only on ESPN, it's also on
YouTube. Any newsworthy item that comes up on that show is probably viewed by like 10 times as many people as actually watched it.
Right.
Because it's immediately on YouTube and that, yeah.
It's really the Pat McAfee WWE relationship on the same network is kind of perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
The same knuckleheads in the same just that, that bro style that Pat McAfee does, like that fits a decent part of WWE's young demographic.
Yeah, he should get in those frat boys from ROH. With the 40-year-old college student.
Like, imagine if Pat McAfee knew who Swipe Right was. He would just have them just sit in like they're the Ed McMahons on his show.
That's coming. That's coming, man. Zeta Steele. Oh man, she'd be. I know way too much about those guys. I watch all that stuff.
All right, so let's try and do we're a month out, just a little bit over a month out, and we'll have more finalized stuff. It sounds like later this week. But let's say All Out. Let's say it is in the neighborhood of like 115,000 buys. What percentage of a chunk do you think WWE could take out of their number?
I mean, I would say probably 20 to 25%.
I was
So,
thinking about that too.
yeah, you're talking 90, 95, which again, like in the big picture, like that's nothing.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
$500,000.
I
That's
think
going to
the
cost
bigger thing
AEW.
is
It's the ego.
just well, the ego, but you're just trying to take up all of the internet space with your
Yes.
stuff
Yeah.
over AEW's
And
stuff.
that's what I think ultimately all this counter programming is about. It's not about, hurting the buy rates. Like, I don't think WWE cares one bit that All In got 180,000 buys. I think what they care about is Google searches and, like other things that we're not even looking at. Like, they care way more about that stuff than we do, because they don't want AEW to get that same kind of momentum that they got in 2019, 2020, 2021. Like, they're trying to make sure that doesn't happen again. And I think that they'd be better off just worrying about their own product, but that's not the tack they're taking, apparently.
Yeah, and the one way this thing could work against them is if there's so much product that it just burns out their own fans. And we haven't seen that yet, by the way. We have not.
Or if something really bad happens with like Brock, in that lawsuit, and it bites them in the ass. Like, if something breaks on that weekend,
you mean like if Dana White slaps his wife or something?
Well, if I'm Ann, whatever her last name is, the lawyer for Ann Callis, I should have remembered that. If I'm Ann Callis, and I got news about Brock, I'm saving it for September 19th.
Yeah.
Like, you want that out there the day he comes back on SmackDown, which I guess it'd be September 12th, maybe. Because that's when I think he's returning to WWE TV, I believe is the schedule right now. So yeah, you want that out there timely, and you want WWE to look bad. So if there's anything that's going to break about Brock, it's going to be on that day, I think.
Yeah. By the way, I didn't mean to make light of Dana White's.
No,
wife,
but I know what you mean.
That was a blip for like a little while, and no one even cares.
Well, and the timing should have been horrible. Like, Power Slap was just about to debut and didn't hurt him at all.
Dude, they caught that on camera too.
They're going to end up, Power Slap's probably going to end up getting a media rights deal out of all this, which is ridiculous.
All right, what's up with Dynamite show this weekend?
Same as normal.
Is there anything? I guess it is the special Dynamite go home show for Forbidden Door.
Well, it's Glasgow,
Scotland.
so it's going to be a hot crowd, and probably
is that a tape? That's got to be a tape show, right?
Yeah, they're taping it earlier in the day.
Okay,
so I don't think
will be out for us.
Yeah, but I won't see them, I'm sure. And then they're doing, I think, a second taping on Thursday for Saturday Collision. Yeah, so I'm sure like Wednesday's going to be a good show. They tend to, like, the go homes tend to actually be the week before that they do the really good go home show, but last week sucked. So I think this week is actually going to be really good.
What about booking the cage match already last week and then setting up the angle to book the cage match that will happen on Wednesday?
And then you got Moxley wrestling on here too, and I think Tanahashi's wrestling,
baby. Yeah, they're tag teaming. He's tag teaming with Jet Speed against the Death Riders.
Good Lord, Speedboat and Tanahashi. That'll be great.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll do something like goofy together.
This is a special.
Well, Speedball should do the air guitar with Tanahashi.
Oh yeah, Kevin Knight. Yeah.
All right, that is it from here. We will be back. Actually, we'll see about next week, because if you're not watching Forbidden Door and there's takes about Forbidden Door, I don't know that it'll be the timeliest show for us. But
it might not work.
But I think the plan, I have to figure out the plan. I think Jeremy and I are going to come back on Sunday, because it is Sunday, right? The pay-per-view Sunday.
Yeah.
It's so early in the day. I don't really know the time yet, but I think Jeremy and I are going to recap Forbidden Door at some point.
10:30 your time it starts.
Yeah, it's really early for us, but I have stuff to do in the morning, so I won't be able to start it until the delay. I'll probably not even like 2 hours in, I'll be able to start watching. But
I'm all fired up for Heatwave, man.
Oh, God, what's the main event on that show?
I had no idea. I think it's Trick Williams and Obafemi, maybe.
But did you even watch Trick against Moose?
When was that?
Was that the Emergence main
Oh,
event?
I haven't watched it yet. No.
Okay.
It's on the docket. It's on the docket.
All
I'm
right.
sure that'll be great. That 8-man tag that they had on NXT last week, that was awesome.
All right. That is it from here. For Paul, I am Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.